once again, I've been sort of debunking the Bucha stuff with information directly from officials. Of course, one of the tweets got taken down, as you guys know. Scott Ritter's back. Scott Ritter's back, by the way.
Scott.
Just wanted to mention that. He doesn't know exactly why, but he's back. And so just so you guys know, anytime someone's taken off Twitter, it does a couple things. Once, if you fight back enough, sometimes if you scream, they have to restore it. Or if it's something that they find that they really didn't do anything, which his tweet did nothing wrong. But also what happens is people who don't know who this person is, a lot of people didn't know who that was, start finding out about them and start paying more attention. So anytime these people, these, big tech companies, pretty much controlled by our government and the national security state apparatus, anytime they try to silence dissenting voices, eventually it backfires because people are like wondering why this person was silenced. So it's something that backfires. So the same thing happens when it comes to what we're seeing now in the news. Remember the war in Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction, which were non-existent. Remember the previous conflicts that have been lied about in mainstream media by per the government, right? The narrative managers of the government wanting only a certain narrative to get out. Well, now what we're seeing is a lot of the videos that were put out about supposed Ukrainians killing Russians have been verified even by the mainstream media. In fact, the New York Times just verified a key video that we have all seen of these Ukrainians executing these Russians. Those are war crimes. It's a different thing to be going out at war in a location and then people die, and sometimes civilians die. That's why we're anti-war, because we don't want people to get caught in the crossfire, which is something that always happens. And what's been happening now is that the blame has always shifted to Russia, Russia, Russia. The problem is the evidence just doesn't seem to be pointing to them as the main culprit. So there's a New York Times article that came out with the satellite investigation theory saying that the satellite images showed that these bodies had been there when Russia was occupying Bucha. And they said that proves that the Russians are lying. And they also talk about having anonymous intelligence. So let's go ahead and go over this thread, because this thread I thought was really well done. And it's by no one or anti-war_soldier. It's a long thread. I'm not going to go over everything. I encourage you guys to go to Twitter while it's there and check it out. But he goes over the main points of some stuff I already went over a few days ago, but there are a couple things to point out. So I'm going to read some of it. He says, here's the video of the second incident on the same street covered by the New York Times article. This incident supposedly took place between the 20th and the 21st of March. Signs of shelling are clearly visible. Same street, also under Russian control at this period. So just to clarify what they're trying to say here, there is video, right? The New York Times is basically saying that these people were there, right? These dead bodies were there since the time Russians were there, and that the Russians just left them there, and that they, this wasn't the Ukrainians doing this, that they just left these bodies and they retreated. Well, the reality that happened is that Russia didn't retreat. They left voluntarily because they were done with their military needs in the region of Bucha. So they were done with that. So they left voluntarily. So why would Russia leave all these bodies there and not, and kill all these Ukrainians and then leave all the evidence there for them to find? That doesn't add up. So they're saying in this whole thread, basically, it just shows how there was already like shelling there because there was a war happening in this area in Bucha. So there was Ukrainians and Russians firing at each other, right? There was war. So there was shelling, and there were people that died, and there were civilians that died. And that's terrible because that's like I said, part of war. But that doesn't mean that the Russians went in there and literally murdered a bunch of people and put their bodies out there, because there's no evidence of that. Because even though the New York Times is saying that these bodies have been lying there forever, those bodies were from the war that was happening, the shelling. Now, as we go through this thread, you're going to see new bodies that somehow ended up there. And these bodies ended up there shortly after we discovered the video of the Russians being shot by Ukrainian soldiers. And these bodies were positioned and executed in the same manner of how we've seen Ukrainian soldiers execute Russians. We have no video evidence of Russians executing Ukrainian soldiers in the same vein that we have the Ukrainians executing the Russians. We have video evidence of that as admitted by the New York Times and other mainstream media sources. So just wanted to clarify that as I explained. Pasta, did you have anything to say?
No, keep going, please.
Okay, so he goes on to say, for some reason, the New York Times does not show the part of the satellite image with a fallen lamppost. The body was later moved, and you can see the white sleeve band on this later picture. So you guys can see here how in the picture, the article released by the New York Times, they said a second video taken on Yablonska Street shows 3 more bodies. One lies beside the bicycle, another near an abandoned car. Satellite imagery shows that the abandoned cars and the nearby body appear between March 20th and the 21st. So they're saying like, oh, these bodies were there, they appear there. But again, that contradicts the fact that you don't know if those bodies are new and they were put in there. By some cases, they say that you can tell because they're the Russian, right? The Russian armbands, the white bands show that they're Russian or Russian, like not Azov or not Ukrainian with the blue, which is a video we saw the other day where they were saying you can shoot the ones without the blue armband. So of course there are dead civilians that get caught in the crossfire, but there have been new bodies that are different because you have to look at it's gross, but you have to look at the blood and the like chemical component of the body and how that happens. If these bodies had been there for months, they look different than a body that's more fresh. And that's something that they're pointing out, is that it appears the body has been moved. And so let me see if I can scroll down to this part where he says the town was declared liberated by the mayor on the 31st of March. We talked about that. But on the 1st of April, officials announced that a special purging operation is underway in Bucha against Russian military and saboteurs disguised as civilians. So they said, okay, so the town was liberated, right, from Russians by Ukraine, but the Russians actually left. Then right after that happens, you see, oh, we're gonna clear this from the Russian saboteurs. They're basically admitting that they're gonna go and find people that betrayed them, right? And so shortly after that, the moments after that is when we start seeing the videos of these people lying on the ground in Bucha. And when the media then comes in and says, oh, Russians did this. So it doesn't add up. If anybody was there to commit the more recent body dumps, the only people that were there was the police of Ukraine that was going in there and literally told you they were going to eliminate these people. And this is a video I was talking about that I already posted the other day. One of the Ukrainian fighters, Botsman, Sergei Akorotik, who's a neo-Nazi, posted this video from Bucha. The discussion in the background, there are guys without blue ribbons, Ukrainian marking, can I shoot them? Sure, yeah, or try. So that was the video that I showed the other day. So they're saying there are people without these blue ribbons, get rid of them. So there are obviously, this is obviously happening from the Ukrainian army. And so it's just obvious to me. I don't know, Costa, if you're understanding this, but it's just very obvious to me that you can't say that Russians came back or that Russians just left all these bodies there for a month and just allowed them to be there. It just doesn't make any sense while we're seeing the evidence of Ukrainians execute these people in that same manner with their hands tied and that whole thing.
I mean, here's the thing too as well, fam. It's almost like I almost said that we're on YouTube. Never mind. It's like another system where the way it's set up, you can never believe it. We've seen since the get-go the false flag, propaganda machine, kind of trying to control the narrative. They started it early over here, even with the babies in the incubators. And everybody who was around during the Iraq situation understood what went on with the babies in the incubators, how it was such a false story. And they even started this from the get-go. And what happened at the whole subway station where they bottlenecked everybody on purpose, and they actually had a like movie tent set up outside, like a director's chair in an area, whatnot like that. Mm-hmm. So as they're trying to pull this off here, there's so much information coming out against it. It's almost like a slam dunk in my mind to go, you know what? I'm not going to believe you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to believe the stories you're trying to tell. And at this point, we know our government, how they try to create these false flag kind of situations so they can justify spending more money and sending more resources to stay involved with these wars. We understood what's going on with Syria, how many times they try to, frame Assad and gassing his people. And we're talking about multiple times getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. So I ask people out there who believe whatever the mainstream media tell them, or whatever they see the news guy on their TV tell them, after so many times of getting caught lying in situations like this, where you can justify spending more money and creating more committing more resources, why would you ever believe the Western propaganda arm? It makes no sense, fam. And we see more evidence coming out time and time again, destroying their narrative. They are desperate on every end and in every aspect. They're losing the game.
And Russia is demanding an investigation, but they won't do it because the investigation will show that it wasn't them. So it's just like, yeah, sure, by all means do it. You should do an investigation, right? Like, if you want to get to the truth, if you want to say, you know what, maybe Western media is telling the truth this time, do an investigation. They're not doing that. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things here. Bellingcat, we know who Bellingcat is, thanks to the Gray Zone and thanks to our friends who have done great investigations into how just the literal propaganda machines for NATO. They put out this whole thing about how a bicyclist was shot, right? And a bicyclist was shot on purpose. I think it was March 11th, and that the Russians were just like having fun trying to shoot this bicyclist. But what appears to have happened is that the person got caught in the crossfire between Ukrainians and Russians. And it wasn't an intentional thing. Like, the person was riding their bike. That is what happens when you have war. Like, that's why a lot of people are like, yeah, Russia is still doing this. They're still engaging in this warfare. But who really started this? And this is what happens when you have war. If you want to end the war, let's have a treaty. Let's have sit down and have resolutions. But obviously, there's too much money to be made by the West from this war. And so they're trying to say that the Russians specifically executed this bicyclist. But what it appears to show is that the person was just caught in the crossfire. It was not an intentional, like the United States military did with the collateral video where they were shooting journalists, children, and just people that were there, civilians, collateral, and murdering them, right? Yeah. And that was real. That was a literal targeting. It's just, unfortunately, people who are civilians of Ukraine and people who are civilians of Russia are going to die. That is what happens. This is why we're anti-war, because it just doesn't benefit anybody. Yeah. And it pretty much does more exposure of the bodies and how the bodies were tied and positioned and how that's so similar to what the Ukrainians have been doing. But the other part I want to get to, fam, this is a really important part of this, is that the New York Times admitted that
oh shit, I'm so sorry. I think I did something.
Did you take something out?
I got it. There it goes. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
My buttons got caught on my computer. I apologize.
What a goon. What a goober. I was like, what the fuck? So the New York Times admitted, and they had to admit, right? Like you said, the conspiracy theory thing is now not 6 months, it's now 2 weeks, and now it's like a few days. Because initially they were saying these videos were Russian propaganda, that this was false, they couldn't confirm. But now the video, they're admitting that video appears to show Ukrainian troops killing captured Russian soldiers. This is a war crime because you're not supposed to do these things. You're not supposed to literally torture people, you know, play with their bodies and do all these things. But that's what we see happening here. A still frame from a video posted online on Monday shows Ukrainian soldiers at the scene when Russian soldiers were executed around March 30th. We showed parts of this video already. And this was, of course, the Ukrainian soldiers killing captured Russian troops outside a village west of Kiev. You know what's also west of Kiev, Pasta? Bucha. Bucha is west of Kiev. So they were about 7 miles away. This video, 7 miles away from Bucha.
Yeah.
That video somehow was at around the same time as the Bucha, as before, as when the Bucha bodies were discovered. Coincidence, right? So the article goes on to say, end quote, "He's still alive. Film these marauders. Look, he's still alive. He's gasping," a man says, as a Russian soldier with a jacket pulled over his head, apparently wounded, is seen still breathing. A soldier then shoots the man twice. After the man keeps moving, the soldier shoots him again and he stops. We saw this video. It is extremely graphic and disgusting. And if you do want to watch it, please be prepared to deal with that because it's gross. At least 3 other apparent Russian soldiers, including one with an obvious head wound who has his hands tied behind his back, can be seen dead near the victim. All are wearing camouflage and 3 have white armbands commonly worn by Russian troops. Equipment is scattered around them and there are bloodstains near each man's head. These soldiers, if you look closely at the footage, most of them had white armbands, right? Most of them were shot in the head, had their hands tied behind their back. A lot of those bodies that seemed like newer bodies that were found in Bucha were positioned the same way. And so that we have evidence of Ukrainians doing this. Where is the evidence of the Russians executing people like this? If you have it, please present it. I haven't seen it. The soldiers are lying in the road a few feet from BMD-2, an infantry fighting vehicle used by Russian airborne units. Some appear to have had their jackets, shoes, or helmets removed. Further up the road, other destroyed vehicles can be seen. The video was filmed on a road just north of the village, Dmitrievka, around 7 miles southwest of Bucha. There it is, where the discovery of hundreds of corpses of people in civilian clothes in recent days has prompted accusations that Russian troops killed civilians as they retreated, which makes zero sense. First of all, Russians didn't retreat. They literally left. So that's still a lie, New York Times. They left voluntarily. And before that, the Russians were living in harmony with the people of that region. And there was just, crossfire happening, shelling happening, because this is a war. And so now they're saying, oh, well, the Russians, the accusation is that the Russians killed these people before, as they were leaving, which wouldn't make any sense, because if they killed them, wouldn't they want to hide the evidence that they killed them? And then, of course, coincidentally, 7 miles from Bucha, you can find dead bodies that resemble the Bucha bodies, right? And the killings appear to have been the result of a Ukrainian ambush of a Russian column that occurred on or around March 30th. So the video that we showed and the video they're talking about in this article appear to be a result of a Ukrainian ambush of a Russian column that occurred on or around March 30th. Right before these bodies were found, as Russian troops were withdrawing from small towns west of Kiev that have been the scene of fierce fighting for weeks. They admit that these towns have been the scene of fierce fighting, which is why you're going to have civilian casualties, unfortunately. And so that's part of it. And then the Ukraine Defense Ministry tweeted about the destruction of the Russian convoy, calling it precise work by Ukrainian forces. He said, quote, "These are not even humans," a Ukrainian soldier says in this video, as he walks among the wrecked vehicles, adding that 2 Russian lieutenants have been taken prisoner. So the Ukrainian soldiers, as we all know, are identified by the patches of blue armbands and repeat, "Glory to Ukraine," the band fascist slogan. And yeah, so look at how they refer to Russians. Look at the coincidence that this attack, this video now has been dated and has been put in on location. And now the New York Times is admitting, oh yes, these Ukrainians did this to the Russians right before the Bucha attack. I don't know, Pasta, you're a newspaper guy. What do you? what do you think about this? Because it seems too coincidental to me.
Fam, like I said, how could you ever trust what the West is saying? They constantly lie to their citizens, and they just.
But in spite of that, the just the evidence presented, right? Because we can't. That's not. You're right. We can't trust them. But the evidence presented also doesn't fit their narrative. Like it debunks their narrative.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it debunks their narrative and stuff. But at the end of the day, if you start saying, "Well, look at the evidence you got," people are going to say, "Well, where did you get the evidence from?" That evidence is tainted, right? You know, so.
But even their mainstream media sources are now admitting that these people, that these soldiers were, the Russian soldiers were murdered by these Ukrainian soldiers in a nearby town, 7 miles. 7
miles away. Yeah, I mean, but does that? Does that necessarily mean that that's what happened in Bucha? That's what people are going to say, you know. And,
yeah, but you gotta. It's just you add the pieces of evidence, right? And the timestamps and everything else, and then of course, obviously, the fact that they've been lying this whole time, as you said. It's just at the very least, you should demand an investigation. But Absolutely. We're not getting an investigation.
We'll never get an investigation. It's kind of like demanding an audit. We're never going to get it anyways and whatnot and stuff. And this thing stunk from the get-go. You know what I'm saying? In other words, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that new information has come to light that kind of debunks what the West and the United States were saying about this. But just the way the bodies were laid out and everything was so just questionable. And it was like, why would Russia do this? Russia wouldn't want to do this stuff like that. They haven't been doing situations like that. We didn't see the systematically shooting on the legs from Russian soldiers to Ukrainians. We saw it vice versa. That was eventually, you know, confirmed and whatnot. So, you know, on its face, I didn't believe it to begin with. Anyway, so I guess that's why that the information coming to it doesn't surprise me whatsoever, and it just further confirms my suspicions to begin with. You know. Yeah.
And just the last part of this section is what Pasta was talking about. How do you trust the media? Well, this is part of it. The intelligence community basically says that we may or may not have intelligence, but we don't always have it, but you just trust us anyway, essentially. So Camilla posted this great video of them talking about that, and I just wanted to show the first part of that.
Okay. Oh my God. Oh. Okay. Cut this odds. I mean, I can't even get through the whole video. I heard it earlier today. Once again, It's like, you caught us lying, but no, we were doing it the whole time on purpose. It's like a sixth grader getting caught stealing somebody's freaking milk money. And then the fact that they want to double down on their bullshit right here. And this is why I say, how often is these stupid tell a lie and eventually it becomes a truth? How often does it work? Anybody who knows anything about anything knows that Russia is the second largest weapons sellers in the world. Okay. They provide so many weapons. They sell weapons to China, but they want you to believe that Russia's getting their ass kicked by a bunch of Azov battalion militia people that they got to go, that Putin's got to get on his knees and beg Xi Jinping for more weapons. It's absurd. And that's what they're doing, fam. That's the only playbook they have to go, oh no, we were doing it the whole time. We were goading them. We were, you know what I'm saying? Spam, this is an unprecedented use of classified information. Yeah, go scratch Ken Delaney. And the way the media just sets it up too, by the way, fam, is disgusting as well. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's just remarkably comical at this point how they're making clowns of themselves. I mean, they're literally claiming that they're admitting they made this up. They're admitting they made this entire thing up, but they're saying that even though they made it up, it's okay because they were using it to preempt the Russians. So it's you remember when we were at the California Democratic Party and they were like, oh yes, this election, there was, you know, unfairness in this election at the California Party, but it doesn't matter because the math, it wouldn't have helped anyway. It's like, what? Like, it's that sort of mentality where they're like admitting wrongdoing, but they're gaslighting people to say, oh, they meant to do it and they meant to lie because it was part of the plan all along. We're playing 6-dimensional chess, fam. And it's ridiculous. And just check out, I think Camilla posted the whole thing if you guys want to like kill yourself and watch the whole thing. But it's really good in terms of how much
fam.
Clowns they make themselves. Yeah.
Embarrassment. I mean, it's just done.